Hey, it's Darcy McConvey, and this is the Venture and Gains podcast. The purpose of the show is to connect people to other great people, ideas, and opportunities. Everyone has less than a handful of people in their network where it seems like there's something different about them. Everything they touch seems to turn to gold. These are the podcast guests. We catch them at various stages of their career, learn from how they think, so we can connect the dots and apply it. Carly's passion for design and creating a more collaborative and open design-build industry is palpable. It's this passion for her craft that has driven her to create an award-winning design-build firm and The Collective, a first-of-its-kind co-working space for architects, designers, and builders. She offers great insight into the ambiguous value of design and the trials and tribulations of building a strong team. On a personal note, she defined my design style as mid-century modern with a touch of old Hollywood. Nailed it. She really nailed it. Check her out at thecollectiveto.com or carriagelanedesigns.com. Enjoy this conversation with Carly. All right. Well, welcome back to the Venture and Gains podcast, season 2. I'm here with Carly Nemtean. I said that like that because I have it spelled Nemtean, and Carly told me that it's like dentine. So Nemtean. There we go. Nemtean. Anyway, Carly, awesome to have you. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a while. I think what you're doing is great. Seems like your hands in a lot of things, highly capable and highly energetic. So I'm pumped to have you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your, interest in what we're working on and what we're trying to accomplish in our industry. And it's so nice to have someone from a totally different industry really see the benefit of what we're trying to build.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, it's not exciting that I'm interested. It's exciting what you're doing, I guess is the point. So I want to kick it off with a question that is might catch you early, but what is your greatest talent?
Great question. I would say my greatest talent is seeing the opportunity and seizing it and really being the big picture idea person, and then having people around me that can actually put it into motion.
That's a good talent. That's a great talent. How easy or hard is it to find the people to put it into motion?
Good question again. I mean, my motto when we opened up this company was hire slow, fire fast. And so, we really brought on top talent when we first opened it, and people that really were able to see our vision, were fans of what we were doing already. And I think that is where it really helps to get on the same page very, very quickly with your team. The biggest problem I find is that burnout, is real, and maintaining that energy is not for everyone, and recognizing when those people on your team really have lost that direction, and whether it's because of leadership, whether it's just burnout, whether it's, their own lives and personal situations start taking the forefront. Mm-hmm. You constantly have to bring that energy to the table and look for opportunities. I really found that being surrounded with those like-minded people is really what takes you to that next level. If you're not having that energy and that direction is really been pulled in different directions, then you're never going to get to where you want to go.
Right. Yeah. It's just kind of like getting everyone to pull the rope in the same direction, and not a short period of time, but an extended period of time.
Yeah. And everyone has their own agenda, which is really what you start realizing. Everyone has their own agenda. And, when you build a team out of the gate, everyone's strong, but then you start to see, where that energy is lacking, or where those personal lives or personal agendas start to get in the way of the big picture and the North Star that you're trying to work towards. So I think It's a constantly changing space, and it's constantly,
evolving kind of like
it's constantly evolving. Yeah. You constantly have to keep a finger on the pulse, because you go a month and you're not checking in and you're not really seeing what's happening, and it can really go downhill very, very fast.
So So you just walk around hammering your fist on the desk, being like, follow my agenda, not your agenda, follow my agenda. I'm just kidding. I don't think that that's your wiring. So just so everyone listening knows, Carly's a brilliant designer, entrepreneur, now new mother, clearly super talented, and an award-winning designer, in fact, and has, I think, kind of two entities, and maybe you can talk about the businesses and then the evolution of where you are today. One is Carriage Lane Designs, which is sort of a design build firm. That is where I think you started. Mm-hmm. And now you've got this growing entity, which is awesome and clearly has a great design ethos to it, called the Collective Workspace, a workspace for sort of independent designers and architects and sort of everyone in the design related industry. So maybe give a little bit of background on Carriage Lane and then how the collective evolved.
Absolutely. So we've been in the design build industry for, going on about 15 years, and my business partner, Rocco, going on about 40 years. So, we have built a company together which focuses on interior renovations and additions for residential and boutique commercial. And so we've been in the industry and seen it grow and seen how, 10, 15 years ago, the industry was very siloed. And designers don't really share their vendor list. They keep everything very tight to their chest. They work with only, the people that are on their roster, and they didn't really expand their mindset. They didn't really share their secrets, if you want to call it, in the industry. And over the last 10 years, what we've noticed is that as, people become more enveloped in their projects and more vendors come to the table, everything has gone online and created this social community where people are sharing the information. Designers are sharing the vendors that they're using and talking openly about, how they run their business and what are the tools and how do they develop them. And, once
on that note, like not to jump in, is what I apologize to for, here and there, I might do that. Like, what do you think was the trigger for people opening up? Is it like age demographic and social media, or is it, what would you attribute that to?
So 100% social media, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok. Those were all, Instagram, I would say primarily was really the foray into that world where people would tag the vendor that they're using or showcase what they're doing in their space that day, or walk you onto a job site and show you what work they're working on. And it created this, opportunity for people, especially designers, to start messaging each other and saying, hey, like, we never met, but, I love the work you do. Who do you use for this? And people started recognizing the power of that tool. And, as a designer in that industry, I actually made a ton of new connections through that tool and through that user interface, and recognized how much powerful it could be if we took that into a physical atmosphere and into a physical space. So, running that company and seeing from my point of view and being welcomed into these different mastermind groups and designer groups where I had never even socialized with these people before, but they were so inviting and so welcoming and really opened up the door. And then seeing from behind that, what are their pain points in their business and what are the things that, are really constant issues that they deal with, but still working in that same industry, and definitely the age. However, you'll talk to designers that are in their 45, 50 year range, and they are also very open to sharing, but and you're talking to, 20, 30-year-olds, and they're very even more open to sharing, but they just know how to use the tool a little bit much, a lot better.
Right.
I think it's really the firms that really built a name in themselves during the 90s and, early 2000s and became a very strong entity. And so they put in those hours to build that business out. So now they're at the point where they are those older designers, and they do not want to share that information because they feel that they have put that time in to build that out, and they don't want to share that amongst other designers because they want to single themselves out as that elite company. So, you're seeing those elite companies not sharing, but then you're seeing all the people that follow them are sharing. So, they're kind of selling themselves out, which is fine because there's so many more people below them that are going to, just through, number one, through the aging of their business. And
so like the next wave of people coming through, kind of creating, to me, it sounds like the sense of community is kind of going to trump the older legacy designers that have ring fenced their know-how.
Yes.
I guess.
Yes. And succession is really a massive thing right now as well.
Yeah. Succession. There you go.
Right. That's the word I'm looking for. So succession is really where they need to really consider, what is my exit strategy? Am I going to hand the business down to my senior designer, who is on that trajectory of on social media and sharing that information, and recognizing that they're going to have to let go of that tight fist. So, even companies like House and Home, for example, they've had to really restructure themselves because, they're a real pillar in the Canadian industry. House and Home magazine, they've been publishing for, I personally don't even know how long, but definitely for at least 30 plus years. And they were really able to have such a, corner the market, and their magazines were thick and full of advertisers, and they had the top designers in Toronto and across Canada, where that was the only resource for designers to really showcase their products and their content. Mm-hmm. And, if you're in there, you had to pay to play. And that's one thing also a lot of designers, they're saying to themselves, wait a second, I don't have the funds to put down $5,000 on an ad, especially when I don't know how many eyeballs are seeing it. What is the traction of this ad? What are the analytics of this ad? And, companies are now putting all that money and those resources into that digital world. And so these magazines, these like foundations of our design community are really losing that battleground and losing it to younger designers who are working with vendors directly and getting vendors to sponsor their content directly, and recognizing that it's not about being picked, it's about picking yourself and realizing the talent that you do have and putting that behind you, rather than hoping that someone else, reaches out and says, oh, I love what you do. Can I put you on this pedestal?
Yeah, way more active than passive.
Exactly.
It's a much more entrepreneurial approach.
Exactly. So I know we kind of veered off in a few different tangents, but we really started off our career in the design build community, and then seeing day to day how our industry works, and having a sample room, and having product come in, having vendors drop off samples, and having to present materials to clients, and having to have that space where you're not in a client's dining room doing that, or meeting at a coffee shop. That's where we then recognize the opportunity and the gap in the industry for this industry. So that's where we opened up the collective Workspace in 2019, in November 2019. So right before we hit the COVID in March. And so, what we had done is we actually teamed up with vendors to build out our space so that the countertops are sponsored by, a Caesar Stone product. The cabinetry is sponsored by Rockpal. And that way, number one, it gives these vendors value because now they have a place where designers are working on a day-to-day basis, meeting clients, but also seeing products. And I think that's where we realized that it'll give the design industry a leg up for the designers that don't have the capacity and the funds and the resources to, find a space, commit to that 3 to 5 year lease, renovate it, and put in like 40 to 60,000 in upkeep. Station someone that will be able to, receive clients, receive packages, and have that access to that boardroom and that footprint, right? Like, we're 13,000 square feet. with a kitchen and call booths and boardrooms and a concierge and a library and all these other companies that they're able to work within, and a private gym and a podcast booth, right? And so there's so much.
I want to move in.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much value there. And, now we're expanding our, because of COVID, we had to expand a bit more into the creative atmosphere and, bring in different vendors and different residents who are in that creative industry, but maybe, on the fray.
I think it seems to me that, obviously the sort of shared workspace, there's been a lot of ups and downs, particularly in office, but in the creative industry, to me, it's actually more, in some ways, a more prime industry for it because of the collaborative nature that may be required based on, certain people's expertise and where they play in the ecosystem, whether it's, architect or designer or someone doing the construction or interior design. So like, how collaborative would it be day to day for all the people that would be in the collective?
So you definitely hit on a couple touch points. So, we are working in the creative industry. Collaboration is key. Designers are driven by touching materials, being in tactile environments, coordinating and talking about the materials as it comes together. So what we found is that our residents have consistently been coming in because they need to be in that creative environment. They're trying to do it as, careful and safely as they can. But at the end of the day, what we're finding is people are coming in because they miss being in that creative environment. And you start to lose that passion. You start to get that burnout very, very fast if you're just sitting in front of a computer all day, because that is not the nature of the design industry. The design industry before COVID hit was events on the weekly, whether it was in our space or just in the industry. Tons of networking events, tons of lunch and learns, tons of parties, travel, showroom meetings, sourcing.
Sounds fun.
It's so much fun and it's so full of passion, and they still want to thrive and they're feeling that burnout. And, it's unfortunate that, they've had to scale back, but they're chomping at the bits to come back in, especially now that schools, it really is also dependent on schools and kids being in school, because a lot of our residents are women, who have children in full-time care or in school. And this is their place to come and really, get outside their home office and start to really put down, a more professional, footprint, right? So so that clients can see them in this professional environment and really be impressed when they come in. And that's what we see. We see clients be so impressed when they come in. We are able to really raise those eyebrows each and every time a new person comes into our space.
And so what's the makeup of the people? Like what's the universe of professionals that would be there? I don't know that I'm totally clear there. I know interior design. I know I met you there, but.
So interior designers, architects, and builders. We have vendors as well. So those are the four really big components of our space.
And on that, have you seen like interior designers and builders that hadn't worked before kind of now start working together? And
oh yes,
that's the coolest part.
That is actually, we've created our own ecosystem. We've created a space where we're actually working and purchasing products from vendors and from residents. We are doing construction work for some of our other architects and designers in our space. They're pushing information and projects between each other. If a designer, for example, if one firm doesn't specialize in something, but an inquiry comes in, they'll push it to another designer in our space that they know already is more, inept at achieving a successful end product. Our vendors come in and start building more relationships with our residences and building more accounts that way. We have freelance designers, one sitting in our space right now, who work just for designers. And she's been able to actually get so much more business out of being here. We also, promoted her on our social pages to say, hey, this is our new member. This is what she does. And she actually let me know yesterday that she got a huge amount of inquiries after we posted that. And she was so appreciative that that business is now coming in her direction. And we were able to really articulate what she does towards the exact demographic that she wants to work towards. Right. So creating that niche environment has really set us apart and allowed us to grow and take on eyeballs at a much faster rate than someone who is in the co-working space, but not really gearing towards any particular industry.
Yeah, no, that is the difference for sure. Like you kind of started it as, well, I guess in my opinion, there's probably more differences, but from what I've heard you say, like you're almost taking the online, offline and putting people on a platform. And not only like are they having a place where they can sort of call home and build their business, but their revenues will likely go up because there's going to be more opportunity and just more things come their way, which is not totally different, but certainly different than traditional co-working.
Yeah. I mean, with traditional co-working, I mean, it's great that, you have all these different industries together. So if you need an IT person or, like there's that aspect, but with the design industry, it's a very small industry, especially in Canada. Everyone knows everyone. Even if you don't know anyone, there is, 4 degrees of separation. So, it allowed us to really hone in on some of the big fish and bring them into our space, and then recognize that there's a lot of also, lower hanging fruit that, recognize these people in our industry, recognize their status in this industry, and realize, hey, if I'm in the collective and I get to now network with these larger fish and these bigger companies, that's an opportunity for me, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. So if I'm a designer and I'm, maybe a one person outfit or small, 2 or 3 or whatever, and I say, knock on the collective door and I say, hey, I'm interested in working out of here. What does that look like? Like, what am I paying? Is it, there's certain packages. How do I get access to it?
Yeah. So we have 4 different access types. We have our Flex membership. So what that means is it's $120 a month plus tax. And it gives you access to our main community space, our main kitchen cafe, and our design library at $120 a month. That is also allows them to book boardrooms at member pricing, which is $35 an hour at member pricing. And it allows them to have that access. They have a key card and they come in, as they feel necessary and work in the general workspace. Our next tier is our hub desk. So our hub desk is 6 feet by 6 feet with private storage, and that's lockable. Those guys are $575 plus tax monthly, and they have access to the space 24/7. They have a key card. They also have credits for boardroom time. So they get 2 boardroom hours a month at no cost, which is a great addition. And then anything above and beyond that is $35 an hour. Then we have our suites. So we have 2 and 4 person suites. Those also come fully furnished. They have storage in there. They have a suite door that's locked as well, that they have access with their key card, and they have 24/7 access, and they have 3 hours of boardroom credits monthly. They also, both the hub and the suites also have opportunity to have their mail address here. They can receive packages, deliveries, and we have that being received at the front desk. Then we have our last tier is our executive member. So our executive member has a space on our 2nd level floor. They have a private space. It's about 375 square feet. It's an empty space that they can make and turn into their own. Each one has their own kitchenette as well, and access to private bathrooms on the 2nd level as well, with showers. And that really is their space to call their own. They have 24/7 access. They get 4 credits a month to a boardroom. They can bring clients into their office for meetings, or they can use the boardrooms. So those are our 4 levels of space. I mean, we offer day passes at $25, and we just introduced a boutique gym at $60 a month to go in there and use the space, within a 9 to 5 hour. We also have one-on-one training that we're offering out of there there's about 6 different trainers. We have virtual training, and there is, small group classes of maximum 5 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and there, it's very focused on, having yoga classes, stretching classes, muscle building, circuit training.
I could use some of that.
Yeah.
I could use some of that muscle building.
Yeah. I think we all could use some of that right now. Again, it's, very one-on-one, maximum 5 people in the space, because it is a boutique space, and it's really just to maximize our, the lifestyle component of our space, right? Because you work here, you work out here, you network here, you socialize here. So it all comes together in that nice package.
Yeah, it's like building a community, like even in sort of residential, some of the modern multifamily kind of apartment, that is very much part of it as well, right? Creating a sense of community. And how do you do that? It's not just where you live and the room you live in, but it's the shared space, the events, the connection with other people, coffee shops, restaurants, great gym facilities, trainers. So it's a hybrid, it's a bit of a hybrid of work and residential, it sounds like, which is pretty cool. And the pricing seems super reasonable. So that's great.
Yeah, the pricing is very reasonable. I mean, we used, when we built our space out, we, test the market and saw, also what's available on the market, but also what is our capacity? What can our capacity accommodate? So we're always pivoting, right? We're not pivoting, but we're always looking at what are the pain points. We're constantly testing the market and testing what works, what doesn't work. Our next big endeavor is to really get a little bit more involved in the library component that we have. And we're starting to now actually sell product to designers directly through the collective workspace. So that's a big component of our space, is the vendor aspect. We could not have built out the space to the capacity that we have without those vendors. And they really see the opportunity because, we really want to expand across Canada and beyond. And so they recognize that they don't have coverage, number one, in certain areas of the city or in certain provinces. They recognize where the industry is going and the need for product and the need to be able to have touch points and locations that designers can sample products, see products, and borrow product and to show for their clients and as they build their projects out. So again, like this space can be, we opened up our headquarters in Toronto because that where we are, which is in the design district and Lawrence and Dufferin area. This is really the hub that has the new hub, I should say, for Toronto. Before it was in the what's called Avenue and Davenport area, where there were all these buildings, which is called Designers Walk. And when I was in school, that's where you went. Like those are the places that you were taught to go to when we're ready to graduate. This is where design happens. This is the place to be as a designer. But you have to also understand that it wasn't an open door policy. The designers in the Designers Walk were paying premium prices to be in that area, especially with with Toronto evolving and in the direction that it's going. And, you would go there and it's intimidating because there's all these like high profile showrooms. The door would always be closed. No one was that friendly. It was a very I would say, very closed off environment, at least as a student and a young designer. And so, that always really stayed with me because it wasn't a very welcoming environment unless you were a top tier designer spending the top tier money because your accounts were at that caliber.
Right.
And so, and it's, it really was an environment that I didn't feel very welcomed in. Even, 5 years, 8 years into designing, like you still walk in there and you're like, oh, hi, what are you doing here? What can I help? And it's, but we decided that this is, with the Toronto and Designers Walk. So what happened is over the last 5 to 10 years, buildings were slowly shutting down and condos were slowly going up. And so all of these showrooms are having to close down and relocate because of one, construction, because number two, the prices were just unreasonable and it just did not make sense at that price point to have a space in that area. And all these new and up and coming designers could not at all afford to be in that area. So where are they going? They're literally in their basements and in their spare bedrooms. Right.
And now they're in the collective.
Now they're starting to like come to the collective.
Boom.
Right. And now all those companies and those showrooms were in that Davenport and Avenue area are now all coming to the Caledonia Castlefield Design District area. And so we saw that and recognized that, 2.5 years ago, and we recognize that this is where they're all going to be coming. So let's create this as our location, as our headquarters. And, let's be a close to these vendors, but yet we're still showcasing them in our space. They didn't find it a conflict of interest because they recognize that designers like to be surrounded by the products that they're pulling. They're not going to go digging for things because they need to manage their time, be efficient, and move on to the next project.
Right. So it sounds like obviously you're passionate about it, and it's, going from 1 to 2 to across Canada and beyond potentially. Just if we step back and think about, you have your design build firm and you have this idea, and now how do you get it off the ground? Like how do you fund it, and how do you finance it, and how do you get going?
When we, because we have our design build firm, we have the tools to actually build the space out internally, right? We are the designer, we are the contractor.
Right.
So that was the easy part. The hard part was really creating a pitch deck and taking the time to sit down with all these different people in the industry, different designers, architects, vendors, and seeing if it had legs and seeing if it really resonated. We also took it the next step further when we found that it did resonate, and we went to the interior design show in 2018. We last minute contact them and said, do you have any more available spots? Right. And this was 3 weeks before IDS show at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. And they said they had one spot left, a 5x8 booth. Amazing. We took it. We built our booth out in, a week's time. We did a soft launch at the 2008 Interior Design Show. And we had so much amazing feedback. It resonated with people. We had built-in fans. We didn't have a physical space. We didn't even have a location at that point. But the amount of interest and excitement that we felt from the people in the industry that we were bringing it to was so compelling that we realized we need to do this, and we need to do it fast before someone else takes the idea. So we went to our friends and family. We put together, we had a business plan at that point. We ran the numbers, and we ran them so that it would be at 50% capacity, so that we really lowballed it. And we presented it to our friends and family. So we had past clients of ours. We had our direct family members and, some of our rich uncles, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
And, we pitched them our deck. We explained to them and looked at the growth that we had the potential of having. We looked at the demographics and the amount of people in the design and architectural space and where it was growing at what rate, and looked at comparable co-working spaces in the same, no one was really doing exactly what we were doing, but in that same environment. And seeing that, we had a compelling case. In our first round, we raised about $850,000. We raised all the funds with promissory notes and a 10% return on investment over 3 years. And, that appealed not to everyone. So we obviously appreciate the fact that going to those friends and families and those rich uncles, they saw the potential, and they took that leap of faith with us. And we did a second round of funding by going through a more, structured process and going to the, banks and pulled another $350,000. And luckily we were able to get that right before COVID hit, because that really helped us over those, 6 months before the summer that allowed us to keep our doors open.
Well, for sure, mid COVID, midstream is not, I can imagine not easy, but the resilience and just that entrepreneurial, like have an idea, don't have a space, try it, raise money. I'm sure you got to more than 50% capacity pretty quickly. And now you're just, you'd be better off on the other end. I can imagine once this subsides and people will be back in the space and be back in offices. I believe that.
Yeah.
Like you can only work from home so long, especially if you got kids buzzing around.
Exactly. I mean, we had about a 300% growth when we first opened, which is amazing, incredible. Like we opened already at 50% capacity.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So how do you as a person then, like you're a talented designer yourself, and so how do you? I know we've talked about it a bit now, just saying like you got to find the right people, you got to have people aligned with sort of the vision and the values and the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. How do you sort of manage your time between design and building a big business?
I mean, that's definitely a loaded question. There really is no easy answer. It is a struggle. I mean, I think that putting people that you've built relationships with in terms of your team and starting to recognize where their strengths lie and putting them in those positions so that they can, move forward, and hiring slow so that you're making sure it's the right person, they have the right direction, and keeping a close eye on them and keeping your finger on the pulse to make sure that things are moving forward. Unfortunately, like it's something I think of like, how the hell does some of these, massive companies where they have people like Elon Musk heading it and having to mitigate between three massive companies like Tesla, SpaceX, and, his, what's it called? Solar City. Like, how does he do it? How does he see through all the clouds and have this clear direction and this clear trajectory? Or you read these, books like Shoe Dog, where, Phil McKnight talks about, building his team, and his team, endeavored through all these ups and downs, and, they're still working through it. But I think that you have to realize that there's so much that you're not reading between the lines, and recognizing that, like, they're painting this like pretty picture, but it's so much more intense than that. And you're being pulled a million different directions. I started meditating. I
think when you write a book 25 years later, your story will sound the same way as Shoe Dog, right? And Elon Musk, like you're comparing yourself to Musk, Bezos, Gates, like you're comparing yourself to, I'm not saying you're comparing yourself, your model of multitasking in making a vision come to reality is like once in a generation type person. And you could be that, right? You never know. You're still in there. You're still in the early days. Yeah, you're the Jedi of design. Here we go. These businesses are not making money for a long time and they just have huge capital behind them to build around and get the right people and have the right incentives in place. And then one day they do. And then all of a sudden I think it's tough to compare yourself to Musk, because that's a great question. How does he do it? Who knows? But he's certainly good at it. Yeah.
And, they say that he's not a great boss. He's a huge asshole. He has high demands, and that really, at the end of the day, like that's even listening to Michael Jordan's show, that, the Netflix show that he had.
I can't even think of it right now. What's it called? It was great.
But,
people are going to be like, I can't believe they can't remember. It's called this. And, we're fumbling around being like, what is that one called?
So, but, even in that documentary, him as well as his teammates said, he's an asshole, because at the end of the day, if you have such high expectations of yourself, you definitely have it for your team. And it's not that, and I can 100% understand where that, that mentality comes from, because it's not to say that, number one, and this just goes back to like the employees and the teams, and like how do you manage all these different facets, and how do you grow, but you're at your soul of your clients. And, you have to take a step out. You have to recognize that things may not be to the extent that you wanted to, but you still need to push the people on your team. And sometimes people don't appreciate that. They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like when, you have your finger on the pulse. We give our team members enough, room to grow, but at the same time, there is an aspect of this is not meeting my expectations and how are we going to address it? But recognizing that it's a hard line that they have to swallow.
Mm-hmm. I think part of it is you learn to look, what do you want to be remembered as? And who, do you want to be the asshole that built the collective? That'd be cool. I'm not saying it wouldn't be, or do you want to be, or do you want to be, Carly was great. She built the collective and maybe didn't become SpaceX, but it became something pretty cool. Like, I think it's just to learn as you go, which is, you're trying to navigate, which is cool. And it is hard when it's your idea in your head and you see the vision to align like all these personalities and all these roles and all the incentives to see it the way you guys see it, right? Or you see it.
I mean, again, I don't hate talking about.
Would you punch COVID if you could?
We're going to have a fuck COVID party when this is all over. I mean, it's just this like.
Well, I'll know to put explicit. This podcast is explicit now, but it sounds like an interesting party.
Oh yeah. I mean, when we opened up our space here, we threw an industry party. We had over 300 people. We threw a Halloween party to launch, and we actually did a Rocky Horror Picture Show theme. We had drag in Rocky Horror Picture Show. We had them doing like parts of the movie and like playing out and like dance scenes, and everyone was dressed up in costume, and like people didn't even recognize each other. And it was a massive industry event that went far beyond my expectations.
Well, I think people are going to want to get the invite to the party. Maybe not work there necessarily for everyone, but for sure to the party, the invite. So I want to just talk a little bit about design, which is separate. Like, I think design, obviously in your industry, it is the industry in many cases, but like is so understated in so many places. How do you price design and how do you convey the importance of design to clients that may not be on the same page?
I think that's the age-old question that I think every single designer scratches their head on a daily basis. Like I had mentioned back in the day, 10 years plus, designers did not share that information. They created it themselves. They set their own standards. They created their own contract expectations. There was really no consistency in the industry. And there still is no consistency, but it's slowly starting to get better because some companies took it upon themselves to recognize the issue and try to create processes and education for designers and architects. So that's number one. Number two, with, creating that value, number one, I think it's definitely making sure that you educate that client. Now, the biggest issue is that it is an idea, right? It's like art, right? It's really beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So it is a very saturated industry right now, and there is no real precedent. So you really find that clients don't always see that value. And even if you try to educate them, it's just not something that they're open to because it is such a, number one, moving target. It's so personal. It's such a personal opinion. It really is it's not tangible. Like my creative idea is not tangible. It's in my head. I present it to you, but you can't put a dollar on it and say, this is this value, except for the designer themselves. So I really don't have an easy answer for that because it is the Wild West in the industry, in commercial and design. We created our proposals, working with fixed fees because we found that that was the most genuine way of dealing with clients' expectations, dealing with the financial aspect, dealing with, changes to the quote or changes to the design. And so, that has been successful for us. But I think if I was to educate your listeners as to, what the value a designer is able to bring to the table is that they're able to, whether they're a great designer or, there's a million great designers and some people have creativity, but it's really finding a designer that understands the expectations that you have for your home and is able to really have a process geared towards that project so that you're not walking into something where you have no idea what's happening next. You have no idea as to what the expectations are. You have no idea in terms of timeframes. That is really the only thing that a designer who is successful has to really run their firm so that you're successful as a client and they're successful as a firm. So it really, there's a million designers, like I said, that are great designers, have good eye. That's secondary. Primary is making sure that they have a process, they follow that process. And that is really where that value comes in hand. And that is what you're paying for. You're paying for someone to put you on that trajectory, making sure that the items that you need to address are being addressed, making sure that the project comes together in a cohesive way, making sure that you're not being taken advantage of by the contractor, making sure that the materials that was sourced are being implemented, and making sure at the end of the day you have a final product that you can put your hat on and say, okay, I'm in my home and I'm happy.
Yeah.
I think that is our primary, and that communication is primary, and secondary is really, is she a good designer over this designer? Because there's a million people in that market.
Yeah, a lot of it would come from word of mouth, and I'm sure a lot of the digital tools now can make the space feel more real than, maybe just pen and paper in terms of what you're getting. I'm always curious around, like, say a couple walks in and they have two distinct personalities. And, how do you flush out not only the personalities, but the design or the aesthetics that they both are looking for, if disconnected, and come to, a design that works? Like, what's that process like, if you haven't been through it before?
Oh, this is our favorite thing. This is typical where, the husband wants, much more modern and masculine. The wife wants something a little more eclectic and
wants a deer head in their kitchen, the husband
exactly.
on the wall. And the wife's like, no, I'd like white walls, please.
So, what? We love those types of clients because we really have to put our heads down and really consider all the elements, and really create something that isn't on trend. It's more something that is reflective of their nature of interest. So it's creating a monster. Basically what you're doing is you're creating a two-headed monster where you're, combining all these different visuals and these different styles and creating something that is cohesive without being like, this is a traditional home and this is the traditional hardware we're going to go with. This is the traditional rug we're going to go with. Design has really morphed into, what works for you rather than this house is mid-century modern. This house is traditional contemporary. Now this house is boho eclectic modern. And, so, what we do in that process is we sit down with our clients, we listen to their pain points that they have in their home. We ask them to put together, pull some images through Pinterest or House or through magazines that, speak to them. And it's kind of like an exercise that we give them. We give them homework. And, we ask that the wife and husband, they can either do it together or sometimes they just are on two different pages and they don't agree with each other's style. And so we say, okay, go into separate rooms. This is your homework, and then send it back to us. And what we do is we look through the imagery and see what is consistent, what are the details that work well together, and what are the details that are so opposite of one another. And then what we do is we, in our phase process, is we then present them phase one, which is taking all their ideas and their, aesthetic styles and their expectations on functionality, and we present it in a planned drawing, and we present it in inspirational images per room. And so we're able to really walk them through and show them, I know you love this image where it's sleek and white, and I know you love this image where there's tactile details and there's warmth to it and there's, a little bit more personality, and we've melded it together. So, in this kitchen, we're going to go with a clean wall panel and clean door styles, but as the backsplash, we're going to up it with creating this tactile finish as the backsplash. And so we've had such success with that because we're able to now be a unbiased party that is now able to, read through all the noise and really get to the core aspects of what they want the space to feel like. Because not so much what it looks like, is what it feels like and what it makes them feel like, right?
For sure. Yeah, you have to get to the bottom.
Exactly. So once we present that, then they, they're not now looking at, oh, my house is this style or my house is just this style. Now it's this, merge of these different nuances that create this whole entity. And so, they see that and they start to come on board and say, okay, like I like the visual of that. I'm comfortable with that. But we haven't made an official selection in terms of the actual counter and the actual paint color. But now they have an array of the direction we're going. And at that point, we know whether we've hit that nail on the head or whether we're just getting, negative vibes from that.
It's exciting.
It is exciting.
I love that.
It is.
It's
and
awesome.
95% of the time, they're happy and they love the difference of images that really are really what they're thinking that we're able to bring to the surface and articulate in terms of where and how and when.
You know what I loved about, we can talk about phase 2.
Yeah.
Is you came up, I think, with the term mid-century modern with the touch of old Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
I like that.
That's it. I remember when the light went off in your head when I said that.
I like
your eyebrows just like, went up and your eyes lit up, and it was like, yes, like I was speaking to, your inner self where you were not able to, like I said, articulate what you're looking for, but by having that opportunity to really understand the styles and the, what things in your personal home makes you feel a certain way, we were able to really take that to the next level.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And phase 2 is where we then start to really flush out the design and present you now with final materials that are reflective of the inspirations, but now you're able to see it come to life. So phase 2 is where we present you 2-dimensional rendered elevations of the kitchen, of the feature wall, of the lighting and the paneling in the family room with the furniture. And you're able to now see it come to life. And like, that's so exciting because now you can touch and feel and look at options and, understand the costs that are involved with this light fixture versus this light fixture. And so that's where, again, you're able to touch and feel all those tactile surfaces and see those inspirations now come to life.
Love it. As a designer, and I think might sort of wind up after this or soon thereafter, is how do you personally keep yourself in a spot where you're open-minded to all the different types of designs and themes and things that could create versus replicating what you had done before?
Good question. So I think because we're not very niche focused. So, in the collective, we're niche focused in the sense that we only, really service and market towards the creative design industry. But in design, we don't have a certain niche market that we're driven towards. So, it keeps our options open, but it also allows us to constantly see what different client styles are and delve into those realms. For us, we love going traveling because we're able to see what's happening, on the ground in different cities. We love visiting showrooms on a quarterly basis because they have new product and they're constantly, evolving that product. We like to go furniture shopping because, again, it's constantly being revamped. in our space, the collective, we have new products coming in. We have new samples being installed. We have a floor model program where we actually borrow furniture and light fixtures and accessories from the vendors that we partnered with. And every 6 months to a year, we actually update, change it out, update the furniture, update the samples that we're constantly, we're trying to at least give value to our residents who are coming in the space and shopping for their clients. So I think all those things come together. I think where it's heightened is having that Pinterest social media aspect and seeing, what are other designers doing? What are people doing in California? What are people doing in Australia? What are people doing in Japan? And having that access to those, designers. So that is really where, you're constantly looking for, what's trending, what are the new products on the market, what are other people doing, and also what are your clients asking for so that you can then elevate that project.
Yeah, I love that. Blending all these different worlds together. I feel like it would be a hard thing. You'd have to focus. I think maybe that's me projecting. It would be hard to not kind of default to what you like. So if you can do that's what makes a great designer, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think just having an open mind to different styles. And, we hate being trendy to the point where like in 5 years, you're going to know when it was done.
I would like to thank you for your time. It's been awesome, super insightful. You're full of energy and passion. So you're definitely in you're doing what you love, which is very apparent. And yeah, it comes with ups and downs, it sounds, but I have a sense that there'll be more ups and downs along the way. So thanks so much for being on the podcast and for your time, and wish you the best of luck with everything you've got going on going forward.
Thanks, Darcy. I really appreciate it. No, thank you for taking the time to ask all your questions. And I hope I did some justice and given your followers and listeners some insight into, the world of design.
Yeah. And if nothing else, we're locked at home. You might as well make your place look good, right?
That's what everyone's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Carly.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Darcy. I appreciate it.
Your time is valuable. So thanks for joining us for this episode of Venture and Gains, where we connect great people, ideas, and opportunities. It's this idea of net weaving versus networking. Stay healthy.
Darcy McConvey is a director of private capital markets at Greybrook Realty Partners and is registered under Greybrook Securities, Inc. The opinions and statements expressed by Darcy and the Venture and Gains guests are their own, and they do not reflect the opinions of Greybrook Realty Partners or Greybrook Securities. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decision.